was so excited when I found this dress at the thrift store. I knew that the second that I saw the thick straps on the hanger that I was going to be looking at a quality piece. And then when I saw this white piping and this little fabric flower bow moment, I was just in love. Not to mention the French darts and this ruffly drop waist. I feel like this dress is so classy and, dare I say, timeless. So I picked up this dress hoping to have my Audrey Hepburn moment, but unfortunately when I got it home to try it on, the drop waist wasn't hitting me where I wanted it to be. So today I want to alter this dress, and hopefully by the end of this video I can pretend like I'm having breakfast at Tiffany's. I was hoping this alteration would be easy because all I needed to do in theory was raise the ruffles up by 4 inches. However, I quickly realized that raising the ruffles up would mean bringing it up to where the zipper was, and that made this alteration a bit more challenging. The second and third ruffles are attached to the lining, so raising them up would be as easy as shortening the lining. So to get started on raising the first ruffle, I marked a point 4 inches up and carefully seam ripped the lining and the shell fabric away from the zipper up to that point. Now that the fabric is free from the zipper, I seam ripped the ruffle off. I believe this fabric is a georgette and it frayed easily, so I had to be pretty careful on how I seam ripped. Then I pinned the bottom torso section of the dress to line it up because this fabric was also really slinky, so I wanted to try to cut it as evenly as possible. I marked a line 3.5 inches up and cut the excess fabric at the bottom. Then I pinned the ruffle back onto the torso of the dress, and this section is more narrow than where the ruffle was originally, so for now I just cut the side seam of my ruffle. It might seem kind of strange to leave that excess fabric there, but in case the fabric gets a little bit stretched out while I sew, I want this extra fabric to be there, and then I'll cut it off afterwards. Then I used my regular sewing machine to sew this together at a half seam allowance, and then used my serger to go over the raw edge. I could have just used my serger and skipped my sewing machine altogether, but using my regular sewing machine first gives me more flexibility because I could more easily seam rip the first seam if it didn't look right, and I didn't have to use pins when I took this to my serger. I gave that a press so the seams laid nice and flat, and then I trimmed off the excess fabric on either side of the ruffle and serged those raw edges. Okay, now that the bodice is reassembled, it's time to attach the invisible zipper back onto the shell and then to the lining fabric. If you want a more in-depth look on how I sew my invisible zippers, I have a whole tutorial on my channel. Okay, great. Now that the first ruffle is done, time for the much easier task of raising the last 2 ruffles attached to the lining. So first I just marked a line 3.5 inches up from the ruffle seam and then carefully folded and pinned the layers together so that I could cut the lining evenly. To avoid fraying the fabric, instead of seam ripping, I just carefully trimmed the lining off of the ruffle piece. Then I pinned and sewed the ruffle back to the lining and used my serger to clean up the raw edges. Here was our before and here's our after. I hope you enjoyed seeing the in-depth process of how I altered this dress. I think it came out really stunning. Now that I made those alterations, I feel like I can keep this dress in my wardrobe for a really long time. Actually, if you made it to the end of this video, I have a question for you. So I'm seeing a lot of people post closet decluttering videos right now, and I definitely have some pieces in my wardrobe that I'm not reaching for, but in the interest of reducing my own fabric waste, I was thinking about doing a series where I take something in my closet that I'm not reaching for and alter it into something that I'll actually wear. So my question to you is, would you be interested in that kind of content? Anyways, thanks so much for watching. I'm off to take this croissant to Tiffany's.